Hello, viewers. Welcome to Newsweek South Asia, a show where we will provide you fresh insights into South Asia's geopolitical, strategic, and security situation. Let's take a look at the headlines first. Unknown gunmen strike again. Over 30 LET men killed inside Pakistan. Delhi Red Fort blast linked to AQIS. UN report flags Al Qaeda's South Asia expansion. And POJK elections failed to gain public support amid protests and violence. A disturbing admission from within Pakistan's own terror ecosystem is raising fresh questions over the fate of Lashkar-e-Taiba operatives. A senior LET-linked figure claims more than 30 members of the banned terror outfit have been killed by what he calls unknown gunmen across Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir over the last 3 to 4 years. And now, the mysterious death of another senior Lashkar operative in Islamabad has added a new twist to the story. Our special report.
The latest name to enter Pakistan's growing list of mysterious terror deaths is Qari Saeed Abdul Aziz, a senior Lashkar-e-Taiba terrorist who reportedly died in Islamabad under circumstances that remain unexplained. Reports say Aziz had gone to Quba Mosque to offer prayers after eating at an unfamiliar restaurant. But before he could enter the mosque, he reportedly collapsed at the gate. He was later declared dead. Aziz was associated with a Lashkar-e-Taiba terrorist organization reportedly involved in providing assistance to families of terrorists killed during encounters in Jammu and Kashmir. And now, his unexplained death comes amid an extraordinary claim emerging from inside Lashkar itself.
किसी को कराची में, किसी को पिंडी में, किसी को रावलाकोट में, किसी को मुजफ्फराबाद में, जुर्म क्या है?
The claim comes from Rizwan Hanif, described as a senior Lashkar-e-Taiba terrorist. In a video that has surfaced publicly, Hanif alleges that more than 30 Lashkar terrorists have been killed over the past 3 to 4 years. And unlike attacks on terrorists carried out during conventional security operations, these deaths, according to Hanif, occurred across cities deep inside Pakistan. Peshawar, Karachi, Rawalpindi, and in Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, including Muzaffarabad and Rawalakot. Hanif blames Indian intelligence agencies and describes what he portrays as unknown gunmen model. But there is a crucial caveat. The allegation has not been independently established, and there is no public evidence proving who carried out these killings. India has rejected such allegations in previous cases.
I think it's very, very important what Rizwan is saying, the Lashkar commander, that 30 of their operatives have been killed in Pakistan by unknown gunmen. I think those who are spreading terror all across not only in India, all across the world, should also taste the terror. So it's good that they are tasting the terror, but as far as 30 operatives have been killed, that is for the government of Pakistan and their agencies to find out who killed them. They have police establishment, they have the world-renowned ISI. They claim they are the best, so why are they not finding out who is killing them?
In April this year, Amir Hamza, described as a founding member of the Lashkar-e-Taiba, was shot by unidentified gunmen in Lahore. Days later, LET commander Sheikh Yusuf Afridi was reported killed in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. And across these cases, one phrase keeps returning: unknown gunmen. There have been no consistent public claims of responsibility, and no clear picture of whether these incidents represent an organized campaign, rival militant violence, criminal disputes, internal purges, or a covert campaign by an external actor. That uncertainty itself is now becoming part of Pakistan's security story. The UN designates Lashkar-e-Taiba as a Pakistan-based terrorist organization, responsible for numerous attacks including the 2008 Mumbai terror attacks that killed 166 people. Despite Pakistan banning Lashkar-e-Taiba, the group has historically operated through front organizations and affiliated networks including Jamaat-ud-Dawa. So, the question is not whether Lashkar-e-Taiba is banned on paper, but how much of its terror infrastructure has actually been dismantled.
What these terror outfits are doing is they are coming out basically bluffing the people, not only in India, across the world, about taking on different names, Resistance Front, and different names. They are coming out with different names just to fool people and the international community, and sometime taking a name of some dawa that they are welfare organizations. So they can't fool people always. The truth is known. They are operating inside Pakistan and under the protection of Pakistan establishment. So we have no doubt about it.
Lashkar-e-Taiba's relevance to India is far from historical. In July, the NIA named Lashkar-e-Taiba chief Hafiz Saeed in a supplementary charge sheet in the Pahalgam terror attack case, accusing him of involvement in the conspiracy. The Pahalgam attack was followed by Operation Sindhu, during which India struck 9 terror infrastructure sites in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, including sites linked to Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed. Now, as India targets terror infrastructure, Lashkar itself claims that dozens of its terrorists have been eliminated inside Pakistan. The big question now is, who is targeting Pakistan-based terrorists? Rival militant groups, criminal networks, internal factional conflicts, or a foreign intelligence operation? Several possibilities have been suggested, but none has been conclusively established. What is significant is that a senior Lashkar-linked figure himself claims that more than 30 operatives have been killed across Pakistan and POJ.
How do we know it is not between the gangs, between the terror outfits, between the rivalry of different groups? Lashkar versus Jaish, Jaish versus others, we don't know. So that is for Pakistan to find out.
For years, Pakistan's terror problem has been measured in attacks, casualties and terrorist camps. Now, another number is drawing attention. The number of terror operatives being killed inside Pakistan itself. If the Lashkar claim is accurate, more than 30 members have been eliminated in 3 to 4 years. And until Pakistan answers who is killing them and why such terror networks continue to operate from its soil, the mystery of the unknown gunmen will remain another troubling chapter in Pakistan's terror story.
A major revelation has emerged from the United Nations on the terror attack that shook New Delhi last year. A UN Security Council monitoring report has linked the November 2025 Red Fort blast to Al-Qaeda in the Indian subcontinent, or AQIS. The finding comes months after Indian agencies busted a terror module involving radicalized medical professionals and recovered a massive cache of explosives material in Faridabad. The UN has also warned that AQIS is evolving its strategy, moving towards smaller, decentralized cells and expanding its logistical and financial networks across South Asia. Our special report.
For months, the Red Fort blast investigation pointed towards a deeper terror conspiracy. Now, a United Nations Security Council monitoring report has put a name to the network, Al-Qaeda in the Indian subcontinent. The UN assessment says the Al-Qaeda offshoot was behind the November 2025 attack near Delhi's Red Fort that killed 15 people. The finding adds an international dimension to an investigation that had already uncovered a sophisticated terror module operating across multiple locations. The attack on 10th November 2025 triggered a massive security response. The National Investigation Agency later filed a 7,500-page charge sheet against 10 accused, linking them to Ansar Ghazwat ul Hind, an IQIS offshoot. Nearly 2,900 kilograms of explosive-related material was seized from the Faridabad terror module. But investigators say the threat was not limited to Delhi. The NIA found evidence suggesting the accused were preparing to expand their network to other parts of India. And this is where the latest UN assessment becomes significant. The report says AQIS is evolving from a fragmented group into a more regional terrorist entity. Instead of building large militant formations, the organization is increasingly relying on small, separate cells supported by logistical and financial networks.
तो पहले भी स्पष्ट था कि इसके पीछे बाहरी ताकतों का हाथ है। जिस तरीके से अटैक किया गया था, जिस तरीके से तैयारियां की गई थी, जिस तरीके से बहुत पढ़े लिखे मुस्लिम समाज के लोग इसमें इन्वॉल्व थे, जिस प्रकार से फंडिंग हुई थी, जिस प्रकार से रॉ मटेरियल खरीदा गया था, उससे पहले ही स्पष्ट हो गया था कि इसके पीछे बड़ी साजिश है हमारे कंट्री को डिस्टेबलाइज करने के लिए। अल-कायदा जो इंडियन सबकॉन्टिनेंट का है, इसकी ऑफशूट हैं, यहाँ पर हैं और सक्रिय हैं।
The UN assessment also raises concerns beyond India's borders. It specifically warns that AQIS could attempt to establish new terrorist cells in Bangladesh. The warning points to a broader regional challenge: terror networks exploiting cross-border connections for recruitment, radicalization, financing and logistics. For India, that means the threat cannot be viewed only through the lens of individual attacks. It is increasingly about the regional ecosystem supporting terrorism.
What India needs to do firstly would be much more our borders. Our border fencing, smart borders, we'll need to up our game there. But you see, that still leaves the problem open that it is the radicalization of the mind of people who are embedded in society. That is the danger. So how India counters that radical thought, that has to be seen equally importantly, I would say. As to Bangladesh, yes, I think we can expect perhaps, because in Bangladesh also, the mix of situations is quite conducive to, an Al-Qaeda-like already and Islamic radicals. So it could grow.
The Red Fort blast was not simply an isolated act of violence. The NIA investigation uncovered a network linked to an AQIS offshoot. And the latest UN assessment now places that threat within a larger regional picture. Al-Qaeda may be changing its tactics, moving from large formations to small, discrete and interconnected cells. For India's security agencies, the challenge is therefore not just to stop the next attack, it is to identify and dismantle the network before the network becomes an attack.
Pakistan's decades-old Balochistan insurgency is entering another dangerous phase. Days after Baloch separatist group marked August 11 as their Independence Day, the Baloch Liberation Army claimed a series of attacks against Pakistani security forces, including a claim that 32 soldiers were killed this month. Pakistan has now responded with fresh airstrikes in Balochistan. But amid this escalating cycle of insurgency and military retaliation, it is ordinary Baloch civilians who are increasingly being caught in the crossfire. For Baloch activists, the latest violence is not an isolated security episode, but the latest chapter in a decades-old struggle over political rights, resources, and identity. Our special report.
Balochistan is once again at the center of a dangerous escalation. Pakistan has conducted fresh airstrikes in the province after the Baloch Liberation Army claimed attacks against Pakistani security forces. Reports citing intelligence sources say strikes in areas including Surab and Gwadar resulted in civilian deaths, including women and children. According to reports, at least 20 civilians were killed and a dozen others were injured. The strikes came after the Baloch Liberation Army, an insurgent group, claimed that its attacks this month had killed 32 Pakistani soldiers.
Pakistani military has targeted civilian population in Surab district, where they conducted airstrike and killed around 20 plus people, including children, women, elderly, and over 16 people are badly wounded. Now, the attacks, which obviously carried out by the Baloch Liberation Army and other Baloch armed groups, as a response to them targeting civilians, is a direct violation of international laws, which obviously clearly mention that the women, children, non-combatant civilians, elderly people should not be targeted even in an active war zone.
But behind today's violence lies a much older political conflict. Balochistan is Pakistan's largest province and is rich in minerals, gas and other resources, yet it remains Pakistan's poorest province. For many Baloch nationalists, repeated political grievances and what they describe as years of state repression have left peaceful avenues increasingly closed. And within this movement, some groups have turned to armed resistance, arguing that they are left with no other option to challenge Pakistani control. The latest escalation came just days after August 11, a date Baloch nationalist groups mark as their Independence Day. The date goes back to the history of the Khanate of Kalat and the disputed circumstances surrounding its accession to Pakistan in 1948. For Baloch nationalists, August 11 represents a political identity they believe was taken away. For Islamabad, Balochistan has always been an integral part of Pakistan, but nearly 8 decades later, the dispute remains unresolved. And the gap between political demands and the state's response has continued to fuel resistance.
What Pakistani state is doing is targeting Baloch civilian populations, targeting villages, targeting towns, targeting areas indiscriminately with airstrike, killing dozens of people in single attack, non-combatant civilians from Surab to Khuzdar to Kalat to Noshki to Gwadar to Turbat, any part of Balochistan. If an independent journalist, if an independent media organization, if the human rights organization, they visit, they will see that these claims, which are always brought up by the Pakistani state, their media, that the Baloch armed forces have targeted civilians, are fabricated. 99.9% are lies.
For the Baloch population, the conflict is no longer simply about competing political narratives. It is about security, livelihoods, disappearances, displacement and the fear of violence becoming a part of everyday life. And with every new operation, activists warn that anger and alienation could deepen further. For decades, Balochistan's political grievances have remained unresolved. And as demands for rights, representation and control over the province's resources continue to collide with Islamabad's security-first approach, a section of the Baloch movement has increasingly turned towards armed resistance. The latest airstrikes and the BLA's attacks show that the conflict is entering yet another dangerous phase, but with every escalation, it is the Baloch civilian who risks paying the highest price. The question now is not only whether Pakistan can contain the insurgency, but whether it can address the grievances that continue to fuel it.
The electoral exercise in Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir has failed to ease the region's political crisis. Polling has been marred by protests, violence, boycotts, and the postponement of voting in several constituencies. With the Joint Awami Action Committee continuing its agitation, questions are mounting over public trust and the credibility of an election conducted amid deep political discontent. Our report. What was meant to be a democratic exercise in Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir has instead unfolded against a backdrop of protest, violence and growing public distrust. The elections were conducted in phases with polling held on July 27 and August 2. The final phase was held on August 10 in just 4 constituencies in Bagh and Haveli. But voting could not be conducted in 7 constituencies across Poonch and Sudnoti after the Election Commission postponed polling indefinitely, citing law and order concerns. The disruption came after deadly clashes and weeks of agitation led by the Joint Awami Action Committee.
जो इलेक्शन का एक सिलसिला है वो बाग वाली साइड पे, रड़ा वाली साइड पे, हवेली वाली साइड पे वो चल रहा है, उसमें यह है कि मैक्सिमम जो अवाम है उसने उसको मुस्तरद कर दिया है और वो एक्शन जो इलेक्शन की ये कैंपेन है उसको जो आम अवाम है उसने मुस्तरद किया हुआ और उससे बाइकआउट किया हुआ है। कई जगहों पे पोलिंग हो ही नहीं सकी और जहाँ पे कहीं हुई भी है वो 1% या 2% हुई है, वो भी बंदूक के जोर पे हुई है। तो इलेक्शन का बाइकआउट है। और एक और चीज का इलेक्शन कमेटी ने अनाउंस की थी कि इलेक्शन का बाइकआउट हमारी तरफ से किसी जबरदस्ती पे अवाम के साथ ये नहीं कहा जा रहा कि अवाम जो जा रही है उनको डंडे मारने के लिए कभी भी नहीं कहा जा रहा कि आप जाके वोट ना कास्ट करें। यहाँ से कहा गया कि सिर्फ बाइकआउट करना है हमने और पुरअमन रहते हुए हमने इलेक्शन का बाइकआउट करना है।
The election boycott has become another flashpoint in a crisis that has been building for months. The Joint Awami Action Committee has opposed the electoral process over a range of political and governance issues, including the controversial 12 seats reserved in the Assembly for refugees from Jammu and Kashmir. The group has also demanded the release of detained protesters, withdrawal of cases and implementation of its wider charter of demands. Pakistan's response has increasingly been defined by restrictions and force rather than political reconciliation. Road closures and communication restrictions have accompanied the unrest, while the region has witnessed clashes between protesters and security forces.
See, the political institutions in Pakistan are under a big question mark. The Joint Awami Action Committee is the strongest in Poonch, where these elections have got deferred for 7 of the seats over there. In both Muzaffarabad and the Mirpur elections held, they say that about 53% voted in Muzaffarabad, about 46%. Other than what that earlier years that voted 60%, all these are fudged, absolute fudged elections, because the Pakistanis want to show that everything is all hunky-dory, knowing fully well that from June 5th, ever since they declared this Joint Awami Action Committee a terrorist organization. Can you imagine? Political activists who are being declared as terrorist organizations. There has been chaos for bad governance, human rights violations.
The violence surrounding the elections has also triggered a wider international spotlight on Pakistan's handling of dissent in the territory it controls. India has now called on the international community to hold Pakistan accountable for what it described as a gross human rights violation in Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. At a media briefing, Ministry of External Affairs spokesperson Randeep Jaiswal said public discontent in the region had been met with repression, bullets and blackouts.
We continue to follow developments across the world. At the same time, I would like to highlight that we have seen the kind of human rights violations that were committed in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir and other parts of that country. We call upon the international community to hold Pakistan accountable for its misdeeds, for its abuses, and for flagrant violation or gross violation of human rights.
Jaiswal said more than 90 people had been killed in recent months during the crackdown on protesters, while many more were injured. The figure reflects India's assessment of the violence and comes amid conflicting accounts from the ground, with communication restrictions making independent verification difficult.
But the political message from POJK is becoming harder for Islamabad to ignore. An election held amid protest, an organized boycott, and constituencies where polling could not even take place has done little to restore confidence. And the agitation is far from over. And with public discontent still simmering on the streets, Pakistan's electoral exercise in POJK appears to have exposed rather than resolved the deepening crisis of political legitimacy in the region.
And with that, we come to the end of this edition of Newsweek South Asia. We'll be back next week with more news, views, and analysis from the subcontinent. Meanwhile, do keep writing to us at nwsa@anin.com. This is Shivangi Mishra signing off on behalf of the entire team of Newsweek South Asia. Goodbye and take care.